Start streaming. All right, today I'm gonna stream because I have to fix a few things and I'm terribly worried about Underdog, who is missing. He's been missing for 24 hours, now more than that. And I went out in the woods and looked for him. He's my little black pug dog, and I need to fix a couple of boards to be distracted from the mystery of where the hell Underdog is, and hopefully he will come home. So we've got two here that are in the category of things that things that had funny notes, I guess, out of my stack for today. Let's see. This one, let's do this one. I think both of these have been to the Apple Store. Dropped in Dr. Pepper. Would like to have data recovered. If possible, the phone repaired as well. And somewhere in the lead it said that they had gone to the Apple Store. So let's take a look at this one. Dropped in Dr. Pepper. This is an iPhone 6. Lewis wants to discuss the Holocaust. That I don't think I'm up for. All right. Hello, chat peeps. All right, let's take a look at this one under the microscope. This is iPhone 6, and I haven't taken it apart yet, but what I love about it is that you can still see the Dr. Pepper in there. That is good. That means this was pretty recent. Yeah, look at that. Dr. Pepper is still in the phone. Dr. Pepper damage. Yeah, it looks like it's not even Diet Dr. Pepper. It looks all syrupy. So this is great. So this is exactly what a phone should look like when it comes for data recovery, which is somebody got it here right away, and it has probably not had any kind of prior repair attempt. So yay. This is excellent. So let's go ahead and take this out of the housing and see if we can just clean off the board, and we'll kind of get a look and see whether or not there's any corrosion. Corrosion happens instantly as soon as a board hits Dr. Pepper, then it gets instantly corroded. Let's get this taken apart. Wave Rider spilled Dr. Pepper. All right. I was watching some cute wild coon videos. Don't tell me about wild coons. There's wild coons out in the woods. They're going to eat Underdog alive. I don't know where Underdog is, and I hope that he's such a people dog. He's the kind of dog that's always 10 feet away from you around the clock. And so Mark is staying at my house. So Mark is kind of house sitting this summer, where I am largely being a mom, which has been fantastic these last couple of weeks. We're starting course again on Monday, so we'll be in the shop all the time. But it's been kind of a nice vacation. Mark's been working here. But Underdog has been staying at the house with Mark, and Mark has a big dog. He's got a Labradoodle named Bear, and Bear likes to wander. So Bear's been going on adventures, and Underdog has been tagging along, except for yesterday I learned that Bear and Underdog went on an adventure, and a neighbor brought Bear home, but not Underdog. So Underdog is AWOL, and I'm worried about him for sure. Hopefully he found somebody to hang out with who will eventually bring him back home. Otherwise, I would be really sad. Underdog's been my little black shadow for like 10 years. All right, so I'm going to take this board out, and we will see the wrath of Dr. Pepper on an iPhone 6. All right, let's see. Pepsi is good for cleaning corrosion from car battery terminals. Warm water and baking soda is less sticky and works just as good. Yeah, you don't want to waste your Pepsi on cleaning a battery terminal. Get some steel wool or something. All right. We're gonna get this out and see what is what. either fix this board or get in a debate about... Oh, I hope you find Underdog. Great. A debate about the reality of the Holocaust, which I went to Poland, and one of the most profound experiences that I've had as an adult was to stand at the train track there at Auschwitz, and it was just, you couldn't help but just to burst into tears. It was an awful, awful thing. I have no interest in questioning the Holocaust. All right, let's look at this board before we give it a bath and see what is what. All right, so how does it look out of the phone? Dr. Pepper. I always thought the Dr. Pepper commercial was really funny. The one they had as a kid growing up, where in the commercial, they would find these people who had never tried a Dr. Pepper. And then they would try a Dr. Pepper for the first time in the commercial, and then they would just fall in love with Dr. Pepper. So amazing, oh my God. And I always thought it was a little weird. Who has never tried Dr. Pepper? It's everywhere. Who gets to be an adult without ever having had a sip of Dr. Pepper? That just seemed a little unbelievable. All right, so I don't see any frank corrosion. We see Dr. Pepper, but we don't see any actual corrosion. So let's go ahead and take these shields off and see what's under the shields, and then we'll give it a bath. And hopefully this one will be an easy one because it came for data recovery really quickly. And this is exactly what you should do. Poor Underdog, come home. Yeah, it's really sad to just go drive the roads looking for little black Underdog bodies in the ditch. That's depressing. And it's really sad just to walk around calling for him, where you've called him your whole life, it seems, and he always is instantly there. And it's just so bizarre to call Underdog, and he's just not around. I mean, that dog doesn't do anything other than sit on the back of the couch, and if you get up for any reason, he will follow you, and then he'll just come back. It's like he's serving out some kind of strange dog prison sentence that he's required to kind of keep his eye on you 24/7. And that's his entire role in life. Now, Underdog he will bark if the mail guy, FedEx guy comes in, he'll bark, hey, something is out of ordinary. But when the SWAT guys came to the house, I told that story on a different stream, investigating a local car robbery, and their dog had led them to my driveway, and the SWAT team guy comes up to the house with his gun drawn, pointing at the door, because I forgot to shut the door when I left. Underdog didn't say a word. He didn't mention anything. He was strangely quiet. Alright, now let's take a look and see how we're doing under here. So let's get that nice and clear for stream. All is well under the shield. Let's look over here. Little bit of backlight. Backlight diode is a little bit sizzled right there, but it might be okay. Could just be congealed Dr. Pepper, who knows? And then over here, corrosion, probably also under chestnut. What else? At the connector, we can see a lot of Dr. Pepper hit the backlight pin. A little bit of Dr. Pepper damage right there. But overall, that looks pretty straightforward. All right, and let's take off sticker shield. What's going on under here? Very typical corrosion around audio IC. See how that's instant? I mean, this phone is still wet, but that is corroded instantly. All right, there you go. All right, so let's give this one a bath and check out the other phone. Okay, let's give that one a bath and we will move on to phone number 2. Let me put all this together so his Dr. Pepper contaminated screws stay with his housing and screen over here and his paperwork. Alright, live chat does not show up inside my microscope oculars either. What are you talking about? Fixing a phone with a microscope, then reading chat when done. Frank's been all over that board. I don't know who Frank is. Okay, let's look at this one. So let's start with a note. iPhone 6S fell in the lake. Oh! I wonder if they were trying to catch a fish like I had to jump in after the fish with a net. That was the only way to catch a fish in the lake at my house. Before I invoke insurance, the Apple Store could not dry it or turn it on. They tried. I want to salvage all data. I need original cell back, fully intact, put together, put the data on a thumb drive. Okay, let's see. How did the Apple do at trying to get this to turn on? So let's take a look. So this has the screen off, and let's look under the microscope. All right, let's click down so that we can kind of... I trust that Jessa does not fudge the numbers. What numbers are we talking about? Let's see. Is there a model that does? What? Read chat through the oculars? Coming soon, I'm sure. Fudging the numbers for money and sympathy is immoral and injustice. All right, what numbers? You do not want to ask, I'm sure. You do not want to ask. All right, so let's take a look at this phone. Now it's kind of weird. The Apple Store seems to have scrubbed off their own writings. So somebody did something in here. It looks like they got out a Scotch Brite sponge and went nuts. This is a little odd that the battery, it looks kind of like a replacement battery, but who knows. So we can see, yeah, it looks a little bit like a water damaged board, but it is dry. Somebody's been scrubbing. You can still see some green over here. No long screw damage. Pretty typical presentation on the top. So somebody scrubbed the top of this board. Let's take it out. So I already took the screws out. And let's flip it. Here's the Apple Store's best attempt at drying your phone and getting it to turn on. Wah, wah, wah. Shocker, and it didn't work. You're kidding me. I mean, look at they totally cleaned the top. They took off the little foam guy that lives up here. Somebody scrubbed it, but they just scrubbed the top. How do you scrub here and skip that? Kind of think the Apple Store might not know how to take the board out, I guess. Alright, so that looks like shit. This also looks like shit. So let's do the same thing with this one and go ahead and get the goddamn shields off. Alright, so we'll put a little heat on here and just take off the sticker shields first. The only thing that has been scrubbed are the numbers. Oh my goodness. You know, it's funny, Lewis, like I specifically asked you the other day to do a journal club with me, and I said, what is a topic that really neither one of us know that much about? You could have at that moment said, Holocaust, and I would have said, all right, and then we could both go read Holocaust stuff so that we could, you know, talk about stuff. And then you spend like 3 days researching, and I have to go look for Underdog now. I have to go look. If there's Holocaust literature that I can read while looking for Underdog. If you come find Underdog for me, I will read all that shit. And then we can talk about it just fine. Alright, so sticker shield off number 1. I could get so much done if I didn't sleep. Or maybe you could get so much more done if you got regular sleep. I'm not very good at that myself, but I can imagine that it would be awesome. Imagine that it would be awesome to sleep. Alright, let's take off the top shield. I really should focus on getting cameras moved around so that you can see what's going on down here. I imagine this is a pretty boring stream. And depressing. Just talking about poor, cold Underdog in the woods alone being eaten by wolves and hyenas and possums, chickens, skunks. Pretty much Underdog would lose any fight with any other animal. A big rat. He spent too much time on the back of the couch. He's soft. He's weak. And he's old. What are you fixing? I am fixing a Dr. Pepper phone, which just clicked out of Ultrasonic, so we're going to go pick that up. And I'm trying to take the shield off of an iPhone 6S that the Apple Store has already cleaned, so they say. Alright, so let's take a look and see what this one looks like, and then we'll go swap Ultrasonics. Alright, so what's going on behind door number 1, the CPU shield. Whoa, look at that. Wow, look at that backlight coil. Wow, look at that. I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's fine. It's just a little flesh wound. That's a lot of heat there. Corrosion on those caps. Backlight area. There's a solder ball coming out of that dude. Corrosion black. I'm pretty sure that's VCC main. And what's going on down here? Corrosion, ew. Right there. And typical corrosion. Let's flip it. Flip it. Down here. Typical water was here at speaker amp. MOSFET, Tigris. Other speaker amp. Or arc driver, whatever that is. Looks good up here. And corrosion kind of in this little corner. Alright, time to swap. So we're going to put Apple Store cleaned the board that the Apple Store has already cleaned. We're going to put the Apple Store freshly cleaned board in the Ultrasonic, and we are going to swap it. So let's take a look at the Dr. Pepper board again. Hopefully it's just fine. I would expect it to be just fine. If it's not just fine, that's gonna stink. Alright, what's going on over here? Frank Corrosion has visited that board. Yes, I like that. Frank Corrosion is in the house. Alright, by clean, you mean rubbed. You know, it's interesting. I wonder what it is that they mean, because, you know, her note says Apple Store, but I assume she means either a Apple authorized service provider that's trying to help people out on the side with a little light rub at the top of the board with some kind of a Q-tip and alcohol maybe, or do they mean somebody that says like Apple in their name, or just has a picture of an apple and then it says something like I certified repairs, and they just kind of have the impression that that's the Apple Store? I don't know. I doubt that it is the bona fide Apple Store. Okay, so let's look at this board, which really I think had some chestnut and let's look together here. Chestnut area looks pretty cleaned up, and that's really the only thing that would jump out at me before putting power into it. So there might be some corrosion under chestnut, but that area cleaned up pretty well. Backlight might be okay. And now that this is relieved, it might not have, that joint might not be good enough there to make backlight actually work. Let's look around. That looks pretty cleaned up as best as it's going to be. All right, I'm going to get some of the water off the board with just some general heat. We'll check to see if there's any like obvious VCC main short or something, and then we will see if it works. If that's what the Apple Store considers clean, where is the store? A junkyard? But a bum. Alright. Have you tried transplanting the NAND CPU EEPROM to another usable board for nightmare board repairs? For data recovery, that is something that we have worked on, and we offer that, but it's still kind of research and development-y for us. We quote it really high because a lot of the time what we're finding is that there's not really there's not a great success rate, because if there's some problem in the board, it's really easy to send a battery voltage into the CPU, which kills it internally. So then it's a lot of work to do all of that transfer, have that go perfectly, and then find out that the CPU is dead. So that's kind of a drag. All right, let's see. By board repairs, I mean data recovery. Yes, data recovery. We've had a couple of successes on that, but it's not something that I'd want to sit here. I'm not sure that there's a good business model for that yet, but that's definitely an active area of research. All right, let's see if there's a VCC main short. In general, it is far faster to fix, to just kind of fix the board. All right. And you kind of want to stay away from the idea that that, like, you know, you don't want to sit here and think that you have to get everyone's data, that you have to fix every board. We really go down the rabbit hole pretty far, and we'll spend hours and hours on a given board long after it really doesn't make business sense. But you do kind of have to put some brackets on that, and at least as we grow at this size, we don't have the model that kind of has successful repairs that could pay for a full-time research and development position. We've had interns before, and we've spent times, like I put Mark on a 6-week leave to just, you know, study Samsungs. So now his Samsung data recovery is really high. He can get you know, 90% of the ones that come in fresh. So we have done that, and I could see kind of putting a team member on a kind of, you know, dedicated, how can we be systematic about this, and whether or not the success rate would support what people would be willing to pay for chip transfer data recovery. Alrighty, let's see. Okay, so this seems like it has a normal VCC main reading. Let's go ahead and see how it does if we try a screen dock. And let's say this board looks good enough to go straight to the battery. So we'll go ahead and go straight to the battery. iPad Rehab, have you ever gotten a fake 6S Plus camera front-facing cable. Just recently unpacked some I ordered a while ago. The camera did not work. Come to find out it's super glued to the ribbon cable. Did you get it from China or a domestic supplier? Where'd you get that from? No, we haven't. We don't do a lot of that because that would be general repair. So just for our local walk-in customers. So we only stock a handful of those, and so we're not getting those from China or anything like that. But I've had to get mad at suppliers. I got mad at A&B Components when they sold me a stack of charge ports that strangely had like an X on them, like throw this away. And then when I looked under the microscope, you could see that somebody had micro soldered the traces on the actual charge port flex, which, you know, if you're installing a new charge port into somebody's phone, they really don't want it to have been micro soldered in order to get there. All right, so with a battery and screen and dock, I have nothing. Boo. And on USB, plugging it into USB over here, I have 0. So this thing is not being prompted to boot through USB, and I don't know why that is. So let's see what happens if we try to prompt it to boot with the power button. So I'm just going to run some tweezers down there and see if I get any activity on the screen. And that means we need to get rid of the battery and go try to figure out what's going on. Why are you not turning on? And we will go to DC power supply. So the good old DC power supply will tell us what category of a problem this thing has. So we'll try and turn it around so that you guys are not so left out. Let's see if we can make that so that you can see it. Let's see if I pull this over. Not that. Not that. There you go. DC power. All right, so now with this board, it's the iPhone 6 Dr. Pepper board connected to DC power. I'm going to prompt it to boot with USB. Prompt, prompt, prompt. And that's what it's doing. 0.05, so it's just hanging out at 50 milliamps. I'm going to disconnect that and do that again. So I'm going to connect this again. And this seems to be a stone dead phone. And this time I'm going to run down the power button connector and see if there's anything different. So tweezers in the power button, and it's not different. It's just hanging out at 50 milliamps. All right, so there we go. 50 milliamps. We'll move that back over. What does that mean? That means that the phone can't hear instructions. So it can't, it's as if the CPU sounds like Charlie Brown's mom. Wah, 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 wah. So if we did bother to measure, we could probably measure the power voltages would likely be present. So there's some reason that the CPU is not getting its message across. And so what would that be? Now, we only had very focal damage. So let's go back and review where the damaged areas were on this guy. And it was kind of around here at audio IC, potentially under the Mason chip, because that's kind of a hot spot. Potentially also backlight driver, and potentially also chestnut. So of those, there are some data lines that are CPU communication lines that go everywhere, including talking to chestnut, talking to backlight driver. So what we're going to do is we can also kind of look to see if any data line resistors are just loose or damaged. So my preference is to work quickly. So I'm going to eliminate variables. So I'm going to take off non-essential chips, and I'm going to take off chips that could be the cause of this problem. So let's start by taking off audio IC, and we'll just look to see what does it look like underneath. All right, so we will grab off audio IC. I've noticed a lot on these forums where people will spend an extraordinary amount of time just beating their head day after day on a particular problem board. And a lot of this you can kind of get past pretty quickly if you just focus on eliminating variables. So while it would be nice to be able to test and diagnose and know exactly which chip is the problem here, there's not really, that kind of stands in the way of being efficient. You kind of have to decide whether you are trying to do board repair to make money doing board repair, or if you're doing board repair as a hobby. If it's a hobby, then have at it. Sit there and think and study and look at the schematic and go nuts. So we can see that there was corrosion here, here, here at the very bottom of that chip. So there definitely was water under the audio IC that was bothering some things, and I think those are VCC main. Look at how it ate that ball. This is a good lesson in the why not to do water damage for the sake of the phone. Let's say that we didn't take off audio IC and it wasn't the problem. Water got under there, and we knew that because we could see the physical appearance at the beginning. You had a ball that was sitting on a pad that looks like this. That is bad. Look at this one. Look at the corrosion. Ultrasonic cleaners really can't get under the BGA chips and clean out the corrosion. They just can't do it. Look at this horrible looking pad. That is not something that you would want to send back into the wild and expect them to continue to have good life out of their speaker. So you need to fix all that. You need to fix anywhere water went. I am sure that if we pulled off Mason chip, we would similarly see corrosion at the 1V8 pads under there. All right, so let's go ahead and sacrifice backlight driver because we don't need backlight driver for data. And then we will change chestnut on the basis of the fact that that was where the water was. All right, so we will get rid of backlight driver. Maybe backlight driver's okay. Maybe it's unaffected. Maybe we could troubleshoot this first and get it fixed without taking so many things off at once. But I want to get this done fast. There we go. So now we've eliminated the variable of the backlight driver chip itself. And we're gonna have to, we've got a tiny bridge that we need to clear before we can move on. Lots of Apple forum telling me to restart. Well, you can't get any information from the Apple forum. All right, let's clear that bridge. All right, now let's go ahead. Now chestnut we're gonna need in order for it to get an image, but we don't need chestnut for it to actually show a boot sequence on DC power supply. So let's ditch chestnut. Let's get rid of it. Alright. At the very least, I'll change the SIM card, open my phone, clean the contacts. If that doesn't work, what are you talking about? Hopefully it's not searching no service on an iPhone 6 or 6 Plus. Because if that's the case, you're going to need to reball that baseband CPU and run some jumpers. and we did have corrosion under chestnut, as expected from looking at the path of the water. So let's clean that up. So we have corrosion on these two middle balls here, at least. Let's look at the chip itself. Yep, definitely on those two middle balls. So let's clean that up, and then just for the fun of it, let's see if those had anything to do with these CPU data lines that we think is the actual problem here. So let's punch these dudes down. No need to wick on iPhone boards, just make puffy pillows, just like that. That's beautiful, and just like that, it's safe, cleaned up, and ready for a new chip. We can show you that with a little bit of alcohol and a Q-tip. All right, let's scroll up and see what this guy's, what Stefan's problem is. That means something is wrong with something located somewhere in your previously new iPhone. Why would an iPhone suddenly stop detecting the SIM card? It depends on what kind of iPhone it is, 100%. All right. An eBay trash camera. Yeah, we can't, if you don't tell us what kind of a phone you're talking about, then there's like really absolutely no information. All right, look at those beautiful puffy pillows. Look at that. Pretty and ready for a new chip. Now, just for fun, let's go on a hunt and see if we can see whether or not those two inner pads, those were the ones that were corroded, whether or not they have anything to do with CPU data lines or not. Let's go on a hunt. So I'm going to go over to ZXW and find that, and then I'll drag you guys over here with me. Let's see. What temperature do I use on the JBC? Because this guy also uses the JBC. I use 380, which is hot, but again, I like to be quick. All right, so not super interesting over here. Let's go to screen, and under chestnut, these guys, this is PP chestnut LXP, which goes in and then back out of chestnut, and this is the 6V0 LCM boost. So neither of those are CPU data lines. All right. Don't sandpaper them pads. Exactly right. No need to sandpaper those fairy wings. If you want to do that, you got to have a good reason. All right, so now that we've taken off audio IC backlight driver and chestnut, let's see if we have any change on our behavior on DC power supply. So let's drag this back over so that we can see what happens. And I need to grab that other board out of the ultrasonic because I don't want it to hang out there for too long. All right, I'm looking for the iPhone 6 battery quick connector cable. Alrighty. All right, so I've connected the battery and the dock. Let's prompt to boot. Prompt, prompt, prompt. And not much of a change, if anything. Hanging out at 60 or 70 milliamps. I'm gonna leave that there for a second, and while I grab that other board out of ultrasonic. our board cleaned by the Apple Store. Jessa, are you mixing lead and non-lead solder? Yeah, absolutely. Of course I am, because that's the way you do. Anybody that says different has not carefully read the research and is just parroting the advice that people have told them without thinking about it. All right, so we're going to put that one back over here. Okay, so for me, this is still a 60 or a 70 milliamp phone. Let's do that one more time just to make sure everything's connected okay. So I disconnected battery, and I'm going to prompt it to boot again. Prompt, prompt, prompt. And it's just hanging out at 60 milliamps. So to me, that's a pretty classic CPU can't be heard by the rest of the phone. So for me, my next candidate would be to change the Tristar chip. And the reason why is because Tristar is a data handling chip, and it also has it's one of the chips, in addition to Chestnut and Backlight Driver, that some of the CPU line conversation lines talks to. Tristar isn't your typical suspect in a water damaged phone, because it dies not because water gets under it. If we look at it on the iPhone 6, right here, water didn't get under there. Water wasn't anywhere near there. So why would we be changing that? And so it would be a typical place to look at the top of your list if you're suspecting electrical damage. Now, because I see that the battery has this unusual presentation, see how the battery has all these marks on it from somebody wiping it a lot, and the battery has this kind of odd thing like this. I'm gonna guess that someone cleaned this board, and then because the note says they tried to clean it and tried to get it to turn on, to me that means somebody has been sitting this on a charger for a long time. So now I'm gonna just kind of rule out Tristar next because of that history of charging and an odd presentation by the battery. So let's go ahead and change up the Tristar chip. All right. Jessa, I ordered a blue mat from your link. Never used one before. I figured I'd give it a shot. Excellent. Hopefully you will like it. I like it primarily because things don't slide. Things don't slide. And honestly, it will, with heat, kind of bubble up a little bit. And that kind of, for me at least, is a little bit of a tell of when your heat is at the wrong angle or has been on there too long. All right, so let's get Tristar here in focus, and we're going to go to low heat and get rid of the silicone coating so that we can actually get to the chip. And let's stick a quarter on that. All right, do you order those Tristars new, or do you get it from donor board? So we just talked about how Tristar fails, so you tell me what the answer is to that. What is the answer? Can you take Tristars from donor boards? Yes or no? And why? All right. What does it take to kill a Tristar? What do you know about the history of donor boards? Let's see what you guys say. So we're going to get all this off at least a little bit, just to avoid pulling off all these caps when we take the chip. There you go. All right. Why does Jessa prefer new chips? Why would you never in a million years of all the chips there are to take from a donor board, why would Tristar be the last chip you would ever take? Why? Why is it? Why do anything I say? Why? What's the reason? Alright, let's take this off. Alright, let's clean that up a little bit. Alright. Gas station chargers and lightning cables with fake made for eye. Yes. Depending on where you're getting the chip from, it doesn't make much difference. What are you talking about? Alright, where's Ronnie? Alright, so let's go back to Robert King says, Robert King tends to be a bit of a douchebag and a know-it-all on these channels. I know he pissed off Paul Daniels, who I have a lot of respect for. So Robert King is saying, depending on where you're getting the chip from, it doesn't make much difference, which is totally not true. You're getting a chip from a board that has had an entire life in someone's possession. How do you know what their charger was? How do you know if they used a gas station charger? What percent of people, once the cat chews through their original charger, what percent of them go down to the gas station and go, oh, look, there's a pink one, that'd be cute? Versus people that go, you know, I've heard that these chargers are kind of prissy and they have to be legit, so I better go to the Apple store and pay 20 bucks for one. How do you know? What do you think is the history, if you had to guess, on a donor board? Gas station charger usage, yes or no? Answer, definitely. Everybody uses gas station chargers. So should you take a Tristar from a board that has almost certainly been subjected to gas station charger usage? Hell no. Plus the variable of your own reball, when you could just fork out $2.50 or whatever these chips cost and eliminate all those variables. That's what I would do. Alrighty. Noob question, what does Tristar do? In a nutshell, Tristar negotiates what goes on at the USB interface. So it's a data handling chip. It shakes hands. What has just been shoved up my ass? What kind of a thing are you? Are you a fan? Who are you? Are you a charger? Are you some kind of a projector output? Or you want me to play on some kind of speaker? What is this, a stadium? Where are we? What's going on? It is the restaurant host. It's the guy that figures out what is going to happen. Who is talking to the phone through USB? You want me to... You're a computer? You want to update me? Alright, fine. Just hold your horses. I'll get the right guy. You need to talk to the CPU. You need to talk to the charging chip. It's a negotiator chip. I was using glass before as my mat. That seems like it'd be pretty slidey, but, you know, I've never tried it. Maybe it's okay. There's like an avalanche of phones in my queue here that are starting to bury stuff. Like my strip of Tristars that I just had out here. There he is. I think there's one left in this strip. Let's see. Are you a new Tristar? Let's see. Tristar is the single most common board repair there is. There would be no reason not to stock these by the truckload. Every phone really could get a new Tristar, like an oil change. It'd be good for them. Alright, so this one we have to put back because Tristar is going to be required for the phone to boot up. Alright, so let's scroll down a little bit. And put this sucker on. And hopefully we can get our little dude to go back home at the same time. That is way too low. There we go. Find your way. Find your spot, little bro. There you go, buddy. Well, you need to sit down over here. Don't tell me you got hung up on some fluff. It looks like you did, which sucks. Hey, you got over it. Alright. Everybody went back home. Alright. She is feisty today because of her underdog. Yes, I am so upset about underdog. Try not to think about... Do not use donor Tristar. It's probably why it's a donor. Yes! You got it. Alright. You're totally correct about the charger issue with bootleg chargers. Alright. Tristar and I alike routinely question what's been put up our butt, says the Elwood Blues, who I don't know. Alright, so we have to let that cool down for a second, and we'll try that again. These new Tristars, are they actually new, or have they been pulled from a board in China? Well, if they're the newest version like these, the 610A3B, 610A3B, yep. Those are, right now, at this point in time, here in July 2017, they're almost certainly new. But if you're getting older ones, just look at them. You can tell if they've been reballed or not. You wouldn't want to buy reballed Tristars for sure. If you do, return them, throw them away. You need new Tristars for sure. All right. Tristar change like oil change. Yes. Isn't Dr. Pepper supposed to fix things, not break them? I'm a pepper, you're a pepper, he's a pepper. Wouldn't you like to be a pepper too? Drink Dr. Pepper. I don't think it fixes anything. I think you're just supposed to drink it. All right, don't forget the cap under the chip. What cap under the chip? What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. All righty. Do you find yourself replacing Tigris when you're going Tristar to kind of windshield wiper it? No, it just doesn't fail that much. Chris Longs, what is in the house? What's up? Alright. What's Underdog? Underdog's my dog, and he's lost in the woods, and I don't know where he is, and he went for a walk, according to Mark's wife. He ran out, he went on an adventure with their dog, Bear, who is a giant Labradoodle puppy bounding around, and Underdog is a 10-year-old pug, and he, the neighbor had to bring back the Labradoodle Bear, and Underdog, the neighbor did not bring back Underdog. So Underdog has been AWOL since yesterday morning, and I went out and looked for him and called for him, and he is not around. So I am super sad about wherever he is. I have written to all the neighbors and posted on the community page, so tomorrow we'll go search for Underdog. All right, let's see if there's any change on this. Right now the change is that my alligator clamps are touching each other, so I will clip one of them back onto the cable so that doesn't happen. All right. Let's go and stick the iPhone 6 battery cable on here, and let's prompt to boot with the USB and see if there's anything different or not. Or no. Nope, it looks pretty much the same. Pretty much the same. All right, so that is no change. So we've changed Tristar for nothing now. Where are we here? Let's move that back away. Okay, so let's go back and look at our board again and see what makes sense to do next to try to get this phone to stop being a 70 milliamp phone. All right. So if after you kind of rule out some common stuff, then you have to kind of question software next. So it may be that this phone is in that sort of 70 milliamp mode because of software corruption. What was that sound? There is not sufficient space to continue recording. I'm not recording. I'm streaming because I don't have any space. Let me see what's going on over here. I was writing a data to drive. Let's see if it finished. And I can pull it out. Let's see. All right, how much of this did you get? Properties. You got 10.9. Great. And how big was it over here? It is 10.9. Fantastic. Great. Which means I can take this drive out, stick it with this old iPhone 5, and I can plug this into the computer. Yay! All right, so now I am going to rule out software. So I'm going to see what happens if I plug this into the computer to see, is it detected by iTunes in recovery mode, which would be kind of like, hey, I can't hear the CPU, he's not telling me anything because he doesn't have anything to say because the software is, the firmware is corrupted. So we'll stick a dock back on here and we will rule out auto booting to DFU as our next step here, which honestly I would have done earlier if I hadn't been waiting on that drive to burn. I hope that you find Underdog safe and healthy soon. $5 from Black Hood Productions. Thank you for that. I am super upset about Underdog. The worst part is, you know, what would as imagining having to tell the kids. I mean, Underdog has been their entire life, and you just forget him. He's like furniture. You know, it's like your little black footstool dog. Okay, so now let's pull this over again so we can watch this. And I have put the cord into the computer so we can hear whether or not iTunes detects this in DFU or not. All right. That's why she's doing this. Yes, I'm doing this to not think about Underdog. All right. The trouble with shorts is in complex circuits. You can chase it for quite down the rabbit hole before you reach the actual cause. All right, so I'm going to say I don't hear it being detected in recovery mode. So let's click over. iTunes does not seem to be detecting it, so that's fine. All right, so then let's go back and take a look at the board again. So let's look in detail. So we'll drill down a little bit closer. So we're pretty sure there's going to be corrosion under the Mason chip because we found it under the audio IC pretty severely. And then when we look around here, not much was ever down here. Not much was ever around here. So we aren't going to really question Tigris. Let's kick that dude out. Get rid of him. All right, speaker amp tends to cause problems, as does vibrator motor. I remember speaker amp in particular being pretty corroded. So just to eliminate variables, I will take that guy off. I don't think he has any relationship to kind of a CPU data line defect, but I want to just kind of eliminate variables where I can. So off with the speaker amp. Alright, and I think I'll do the same thing for vibrator motor, just because it's not required in any way, and I don't want to have something that I know had corrosion troll me because of some variable that I don't have in mind. Alright, baseband area looks good, and I will flip it over here. Let's look down here and see does anything jump out at us down here? Nope. And then back up here. Alright, so really the only other thing I would do is to take off Mason chip. And then after that, you'd have to really think about it. So it would become a thoughtful, thought-provoking board here. Alright, so let's look at Mason chip area, and let's kind of also try to take a look at those edge of these brackets. Alright, let's take off Mason. Alrighty. Somebody has mistaken the no flux given t-shirt for a drug needle, and that I don't care about using drugs. Pretty funny. We need to make some new t-shirts. I've been saying that for a while as well. Alright, so as expected, under Mason, there is some, probably this is the 1V8 line. We could go check on the schematic to know for sure. Alright, let's clean up the pads. It might be fun to go check on the schematic. Let's clean up the pads first. So we will spend a half hour wicking these pads to dry cobblestone perfection. Not! Let's get rid of this. Didn't see the beginning, are you getting a dead short or a partial short? I don't believe I have any short at all. I have a board that is consuming low current, which to me means it cannot hear, understand, or the CPU is not issuing instructions. Alrighty. Not every problem is a short. That's one of those words that everybody... I noticed I was reading over the Practical Board Repair School little incoming questionnaire for the guys that are coming on Monday. And one guy said, you know, like, what I asked them, what do you want to learn here? State your purpose. What is it that you really want to get out of this? And he said, learn to understand what's the cause of boards that are shorting out. And that will be something that I will beat out of him on day one, is the idea that the word short means any problem with any board, which isn't true. All right, so now looking at these pads, we can see really frank and obvious corrosion here. Let's see. All right, so look at this pad. That pad is just obliterated. Look at that, number 3 from the right. That is just chewed up and gone. Same for this. I'm pretty sure these are going to be 1V8 pads, but let's check to be sure. All right, so those guys were really seriously corroded under that mason chip. And if we look back at the mason chip, it's the same kind of corresponding marks. All right, so let's see. All right, wicked, Jessa. I will not. There is absolutely no reason to tear up my board. What do you think would happen if I had actually put some braid on these so damaged pads? They would be gone. Senseless. Senseless for an iPhone. All right, so let's go on a hunt and see at ZXW on, let's see, iPhone 6. What are those pads under Mason, and see if they actually are 1V8 or something else. Maybe I'm crazy. All right, let's see. All right, so let me remember where they were again. I gotta get rid of this. Move that over there. All right, so the pads that we are interested in are on this row, 3 from the top edge of Mason, 1, 2, 3 down, and 1, 2, 3, 4 over. So let's go over here and see. All right, so here is the wrong side of the entire board. Here we go. Here's Mason. All right, so we were interested in this guy. Click it. Come on. Let me click you. Not. How about this? PP1V8. And there it is, PP1V8. So those were PP1V8 corroded pads. All right, so without Mason on, the phone should, at least in theory, have the ability to boot. So let's see if there's any difference with our DC power supply. So I'm going to find my dock again, and we're going to try this again. Now, after this, I would say this board then kind of needs thought. So I would probably have to really look at it and think about it to see what else it could be. All right, so let's plug it in and see, is there any change or not? Nope. So this is still a 50 milliamp board. All right, let's see. Had a whole pack of Masons that looked sabotage. A microscopic nick in every single one of them in the corner. Yeah, I've also got a bunch of really shitty chips lately, which really sucks. All right, so I'm gonna, I think, next rule out parts. So I want to kind of proof my parts. I don't want to spend too much time on any one board where I may be having a parts problem. So if my DC power supply, for example, isn't making good contact, then I'm never going to get a good reading here. So let's try this a different way. I'm just pressing that DC power cable in there, and I'm going to use the tweezers to start it, and it seems kind of the same. I feel like this dock, I feel like I have been using it lately, and it should be okay. Pretty sure I just recovered something with it tonight. Maybe not. Oh, Underdog, where are you? All right, I'm gonna connect to the computer again. So I'm prompting to boot, let go. And this is still a 50 milliamp phone. All right, so let's look kind of one more time under the microscope for anything that jumps out at us as a variable. And then I think that would, I want to switch over to the other board that we're working on, and this one would have to get more thought. At this point, then you would have to kind of proof all of those power voltages to make sure that you're not missing a voltage, but I doubt it. This board didn't really have a ton of damage to begin with, so it's pretty focal. I don't think any of these are missing or off. So I would check for 1V8 first, because that just seemed like it really got seared. That line really experienced a serious punch in the face, which could have, you know, traveled in all the way up into the PMIC and made it so that the PMIC can't generate 1V8. But that would be electrical damage, not through corrosion. All right, let's see. I don't think that Stockholm chip could bother this, but that's really, really severe. You could also have a break in 1V8 from corrosion. Like, this is just so severe. I mean, it's really kind of eaten away. All right, I think if we had a short on 1V8, we would see a higher power consumption or current consumption than we're seeing. So I don't think we're going to have a short, but we could have an open line on 1V8 somewhere. All right. I mean, look at that. That's like chewed up that trace. Like, I'm not even sure that's not the second layer. Chewed up. 0.325. That seems normal. $399, $333, $333, $325. I think those are VCC main ones over there. All right, so this is, you know, I mean, this could be, and I think it would be kind of a funny example if it was. So what is 1V8? Like, what does 1V8 do? What's on 1V8? 1V8 is really kind of a brainstem power rail. So 1V8 is used to generate all of the CPU instructions. So our fault here is that the CPU either cannot speak or it cannot be heard. So our first idea was maybe one of these chips is bad and is scrambling that signal. You know, kind of like you're talking on the phone, put the pie in the oven, set it at 350, but on the upstairs extension, your little sister picks up the phone and just starts singing one of her nursery rhymes, and all you can hear is ah, da, da, da. So we took off the little sister chips that might be interfering with the important business phone call that the CPU is trying to have with everybody else. So that was idea number one of why is the CPU's instructions either not issued, not heard, or not understood. So that's why we went around and picked off Backlight Driver and Tristar, because they are kind of all on that kind of party line that the CPU is using to issue instructions. Then that kind of leads us to number 2, which is this. We can see not very much damage in the phone, but where the damage is on a little bit on VCC main, but we can really see it on the 1V8 line. So that telephone line, the 1V8 line, we can see that someone has gone into the upstairs bathroom in the kitchen and sledgehammered the extension there. So we can see that, which means that there was likely a surge on that line. And so that could damage either the CPU internally, which is kind of plugged into that 1V8 line to issue those instructions. It could damage the PMIC, which is the originator of that voltage from battery voltage, or it could damage the NAND. So the NAND itself, where all of the information is stored, the library, also is powered by that 1V8 rail. So that's kind of, this picture is sort of, comes together a little bit. So the next thing that I would do would be to start testing voltages to see whether or not 1V8 is present at all, and whether or not there's any instructions that are coming out of the CPU or none at all. One thing that you could also do, and we also investigated software, like are the instructions just, have they been erased? And so the CPU has, telephones are all working, extensions are all working, everybody's line is clear, but he's just not saying anything because somebody erased his paper that he was reading off of. So there are no instructions. And so we tested to see whether or not the phone was auto booting to DFU. So one thing that we could do is we could say, well, let's just try to give you some new instructions anyway. And we could try to force this phone to boot in recovery mode and then ask it to update. So that would be also what I would do next. And then I would try to update. And my guess is that it would likely fail with one of these NAND errors like error 4013 or error 4005. So my guess is that now the likelihood of being able to solve this phone really only has a couple of paths to data. We've really blocked off most of the paths. So right now, bubbling up the list are that the CPU itself can no longer, it itself was electrically damaged. See how it looked, what Mason chip looked like and those pads looked like? If that same kind of insult happened internal to the CPU, then the CPU is not going to be able to speak, and that is not going to have a path to data. Same thing can happen in the NAND. So if the NAND gets insulted like that, the NAND can lose its ability to be a librarian and pull all of the books and give it to the CPU to read. So that would also have no path to data. So the only kind of avenues that we still have would be if there's just been a corruption in the software that we could heal with a software update, which is a possibility that would still lead a path to data. And number 2 is that the insult was really at the PMIC, so that the PMIC is not generating that 1V8. So PMIC should generate 1V8 all the time from the battery voltage, and if it's not doing that, then the PMIC could be to blame. So if we're actually missing that 1V8. So that's where we would sort of get left with this phone. So we'll do, I think I'll just test for 1V8, and then if it's software, we would kind of leave that to the side because that just takes too long. And I want to take a look at this other phone. So let's see what's going on in chat. All right, let's see. What is going on back here? Let's see. Let's go back a little bit. Used ICs, all right. Used ICs, we talked about that. Somebody's talking about programmers, like baseband programmers, t-shirt, a reprogrammer, 50 milliamp is usually DFU, I thought, but it's not in DFU. 50 milliamp is, can be DFU. It's all the same thing. It's all the same fault, which is, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. What? That's the fault. So it could be because it's in DFU, because nothing's written down anymore, because the little sisters is banging the extension upstairs, or, it's the same fault that can have all of these different ways to arrive at the same underlying problem of la 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 what? Charlie Brown's mom's talking from the CPU. That's what it sounds like. All right, can you force it into DFU? Yes, that would be on our radar screen right now. All right, let's see. I'd kick myself if what's causing the 50 milliamp problem is a dead cap. Well, a dead cap can't really do that, right? That would be a short to ground. We don't have a short to ground. If we had a short to ground, we would have a high power consumption. A resistor, and we can use our eyeballs. There's resistors don't stop being resistors on iPhones. They get knocked off the board. We don't have any of that going on. All right, remove the NFC IC. No, I don't think so. Key on CXW. What? No, Robert King, the DigiKey and Mouser don't have iPhone ICs except for maybe backlight driver. That's it. Yes, they do not. Don't waste your time. That's another route. That's leading you in the wrong direction. All right. No, they absolutely don't have any of the iPhone chips or connectors. That is bad information. All right, let's see. Jessa ending the stream. Let's see. Jessa, would you pull it just to ease curiosity? All right, fine. So Chris Long is curious, and he wants me to take off Stockholm and the shit that's around here. Okay, fine. I don't think that Stockholm has a path. I'm not going to look it up on the schematic, but I don't think it has a data communication line, but it doesn't need to be there, so we can take it off. I bet it'll have corrosion on VCC main, possibly though. The audio IC sure did. Come off, mofo. Alright, so let's see. I don't think that black spot is normal, is it? I'm gonna go with no. The black spot is corrosion, in which case, if there is a change, we can learn something. We have a little spot of weird corrosion right there. A little bit of Dr. Pepper, I believe. Yes. A little bit of Dr. Pepper. That really is kind of connecting all four of those dudes. So if that makes a difference, let's figure out who that is. Alright, so let's go over to our buddy ZXW, and I have to orient my chip the same way that it goes, which I've forgotten. I think it goes like this, which would mean that we're talking about these two guys here, maybe even all four of those. Alright, shut up, JVC. Alright, let's take you guys over here to screen. And was it these two? Great. NC. Alright, here we go. Stockholm RF Data IO. And Stockholm, I can't read that. Stockholm Comp 2. Alrighty. Okay, let's see. And somebody donated $5. I'd like to give a shout out to all the shout outs out there. All right, shout out, shout it. All right. Okay, so let's see whether or not, let's make sure that we have appeased Chris Long so that we don't have to hear any guff about whether or not we have to take anything else off. All right, let's see. Stockholm Syndrome. Ha! Oh, I would love for that to solve this so that I could rename this entire video Stockholm Syndrome instead of Dr. Pepper. That would be great. More so the larger IC next to the PMIC. Not sure of the U number. The larger IC next to the PMIC? That's not Stockholm? What other IC? Stockholm? Is there a different one? What are you talking about? The larger IC next to the PMIC? I don't know what you're talking about. Oscar stuff? Let's see. They do have some of them, Jessa. Not really. I mean, you're just wasting time if you go ahead, waste your time. You'll find maybe a backlight driver. You'll find the camera LDO. Let's see. What else could you possibly find on there? You won't find anything you need. You won't find Chestnut. You won't find PMIC. You won't find Mason. You won't find Cumulus. You're totally wasting your time. All right, let's see. JVC is loud as hell. That's the one thing I hated. Yes. Besides that, no complaints. Yeah, I agree. All right, Chris Long, have we satisfied your curiosity on this board by taking off this Stockholm chip? Hope so. All right, let's see. Let's see if we have a difference. And while we're fired up, we'll do our last step on this board, which is to test to see whether or not we have 1V8 present. So our problem is either the whole telephone line is just completely a dial tone because there's no voltage on that line whatsoever, versus we're ruling out now that somehow Stockholm was causing static. All right, but I'd be surprised. I don't think Stockholm has it's definitely not on the main CPU communication lines that tend to go wrong, but let's find out. All right, let's pull this over here. Here we go. Let's connect a dock and let's find out if this board is magically solved, which would be great, so that I can go back to worrying about Underdog. Let's see. All right, prompt to boot. Ready? Here we go. Prompt. Start booting, mofo. Boot, mofo. Maybe I should plug in the other end. That would work. All right, plugging in the other end. Plugging in the other end. And it's exactly the same. So Stockholm is also not involved. All right, so while it is under power, let's click over to voltage mode and let's go around and test and see if we have some 1V8s. Let's see what we have here at, oh geez, I can't see my DC power to know if I'm still, if this came off or not. All right, so let's see. Voltage mode. The trust-based multimeter says at these little 1V8 resistors, what say you? It says 1.8. It says 1.8. 1.8. All right, fair enough. Let's just check by NAND if possible without flipping this out. All right, what about right here? 1.8. Okay, fair enough. All right, so now we are gonna take this, disconnect this off. So now the next thing is to rule out software. And is this just kind of a corrupt NAND chip? So let's see. We'll move this back out of the way. All right, so that means we need to have a mechanism to boot this in recovery mode, which might be a little bit difficult, but we'll give it a try. So I'm going to stick their screen back on here, which is I'm having to do because it has a home button and my test screen does not. So we'll stick theirs on. We won't be able to see an image because we don't have a chestnut on here. That's okay. But we did confirm that the PMIC is generating the 1v8, so that closed off one of our paths to data, and now we really only have one path to data left. All right, so we are going to hook up. Let's see if we can do it with a battery. All right, so I have connected the screen so that I can use a power button, and I'm gonna give the phone the prompt to boot in recovery mode, which is battery, dock. I'm gonna plug it in to USB with the home button pressed down. And let's see, can it boot into recovery? Let's hear. Let's see if it can or not. Error 53. Is there a list? Somebody just posted that the other day in Practical Board Repair School group, I think. It's not super useful, but you guys could go search for it. The black IC next to the PMIC, his name is Stockholm. His name is Stockholm. We just took him off. All right, so that does not appear to boot to recovery, which is a little odd. I'm surprised that it can't do that. I'm pretty surprised. We could go check to see if there's other NAND power rails that are just missing, but I would be surprised about that too. All right, I need to be able to see this. Yep, this phone is not able to sit in recovery mode. Well, that's kind of good. There's a reason why. I mean, recovery mode is just saying, is your brainstem functioning? And usually it is. All right, so let's see why. At this point, when I have to kind of look at something in detail because it doesn't have, you've kind of really eliminated variables, you've really narrowed down your problem, then at that point, when it's still not solved, and then you kind of have to kind of go at sort of this like really fine-tuned level. I usually give it another ultrasonic bath just to sort of clear the tracks of the things that we've already kind of looked at, and just make it so that we can notice tiny little things that are kind of left hanging. That really shouldn't be that loose, that entire set here. Why is that so corroded? I mean, this phone has very focal damage to begin with. So let's just take a peek at some spots we didn't look at, and then we'll give it another bath. We're looking for, you know, like a missing resistor or something that we missed, which I don't think we did. And we're going to try to look under these brackets where we really haven't looked. We could measure for our 3 volts to NAND to see whether or not we have connection to the NAND that way. Seems pretty cleaned up. And then I would second guess parts like the battery connector. You know, the you know, just swap out the dock and the battery cables, things like that, to just kind of eliminate those as variables as well. I don't think that Mesa chip could keep us from booting. Kind of want to clean out here at backlight driver a little bit. Make sure that we don't have any internal shorts in here. In the orientation you are looking at the board, it is below PMIC and to the left of audio IC. I have a 6+ here with the same issue, a 60 amp draw with no DFU and won't go into DFU. Awesome. What have you done to it? Let's hear. What's the history? What's the physical findings? Did you change Tristar? Did you take off backlight driver and chestnut? Alright, let's clean that out a little bit. Throwing out what's worked for you in what cases? Oh, if you have an identical phone. If you have a phone that has varifocal damage, that has a presentation of 50 milliamps on DC power supply, that does not go into DFU mode, that does have one V8 present, that is no longer has backlight driver chestnut, that you have changed Tristar on, yeah, I absolutely want to hear about it. That does not have long screw damage. What I'd be interested in doing next, which you can do on yours and then let me know because I gotta go to bed, is if you take NAND off, does it detect? That's what I would expect. A phone with no NAND on it whatsoever is kind of fake detected by iTunes, and that kind of like proves that circuitry. Take NAND off and make sure you hear it go ding. That sort of USB detect. Alright, let's see if we had some kind of a little bridge there or something. But I think it is way later than I thought. So it is going to be time to put this one aside soon But I think we have definitely ruled out a lot of things, and this is really our paths to successful data recovery are pretty slim right now. We have we're really kind of circling the wagons on this being the CPU is not issuing instructions because he's not issuing instructions because it's a CPU fault, which does not have a path to data, or the all the circuitry is fine, but the NAND is not able to receive and deliver content because he's fucked up. And so if you have a fucked up NAND, then that's also not going to have a path to data. So we'll have to think and measure, we would just kind of have to prove that that's true by proving the circuitry. So we would prove that our power voltages are present and that nothing is really interfering with that we could change. All right, let's do this again. Let's see. NAND off, the CPU should still detect and turn on if I get down to that. Only, I'll try for sure. Okay, well, what else did you do? Let's just see. Let's see. Yep, so it's still a 50 milliamp phone. It'll go all the way to the restore point and then error 40. Wait, what? It sounds like you're talking about a different phone. All right. Wouldn't taking the NAND off stop it from booting? Well, sure, but it doesn't stop it from detecting. No LSD, unopened phone, literally shut off on a phone call and wouldn't boot back up. All right. So, and it's a 50 milliamp phone. That sounds like audio IC. Well, what if I checked all the main power rails for shorts, no shorts. I checked power rails. Well, if it's 50 milliamp, it's not going to have a power rail short. So you know that out of the gate. This is a data line problem. Let's see. I replaced Tristar. Haven't pulled backlight. What the heck? It's totally going to be backlight driver on that phone. Let's see. That is almost certainly backlight driver is. Backlight driver is the little sister upstairs going da 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 and making it so nobody can hear anything. All right, let's see. What are you talking about? This in the orientation you're looking at the board. It is below PMIC and to the left of audio IC. What are you talking about? Below PMIC and to the left of audio IC. You mean the Oscar chip? All right. Large black IC to the right of the PMIC has the big N and pattern on it. That guy, Oscar? I don't think that has any, it scares me that we're all up at 3 a.m. Haha. I don't think that guy has any I2C line communications that could be scrambled through there. I've never seen that before. All right. Okay. So for this one, I'm going to give it a bath and I will update you guys if I, figure out what it is. But something like this is, this is about the amount of time that I would spend on this phone. Then I would put it aside and then come back to it briefly. Maybe have Mark take a look at it or something like that. And I would say that, a phone like this for data recovery is just kind of like ruling out some other things, just kind of confirming that this should be working as long as the CPU and the NAND itself aren't non-functional. But as we drilled down so close on this problem, it really is pointing to CPU or NAND not being functional. We just kind of have to do a little bit more work to leave no stone unturned. Alrighty. Do you still take boards to work on for your class? Students bring boards to work, sure, and we work off of the queue. Yeah. Alrighty. So that is it for me. I need to go get some sleep so that I can spend tomorrow hunting for Underdog. And I'm just so worried about him. He's out somewhere in the big, deep, dark woods. Alrighty.